Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the presentation of the San Jacinto River Waste Pits Superfund site. My name is Jackie Medcalf, and I am here today to bring you the latest updates for this Superfund process. We're going to be going over the most recent Community Advisory Committee meeting, which took place in April of 2021. And the abbreviation for the Community Advisory Committee is CAC. You'll hear me refer to that quite often throughout this presentation. And keeping in mind, as we go through this presentation, I encourage all of you to formulate your thoughts, write down your questions, write down your concerns, because we are gearing up for the EPA to host a public meeting in June, which we will talk more about later in this presentation. So the topics that were covered at the CAC meeting were the remedial design updates, text dot updates, the San Jacinto River Fleet, U.S. Army Corps of Engineer communications, and community engagement. All right, so just setting a little bit of groundwork for those of you who might be newer to this effort, or to give others, just a geographic context. When I refer to the northern impoundment or the northern site or the northern pit, I am talking about this area here outlined in blue. That is the northern waste pit that is one of the areas of this Superfund site. And then the outlined area in yellow is the southern impoundment or the southern pit or southern site. And so we're going to talk specifically in the next few slides about each of these areas. All right, so the updates we received at the CAC meeting for the southern impoundment was that the EPA received the final design for the southern site on April 19th of 2021. So at the meeting, the agency let us know that they plan to have their review of this final design report completed by the end of April. Our remedial project manager for the site is currently out of office, so I am unsure if they met that deadline or not, but fortunately, we will be hearing from them in the near future. Also, the EPA is currently evaluating starting the construction at the southern site independent of the northern site. So there's a bit of an interesting mix going on here where, although the northern site and the southern site are both part of the same Superfund site, they have different responsible parties. So at the southern impoundment, the EPA is holding accountable International Paper as the responsible party for that cleanup. At the northern site, there are two responsible parties. It is the Waste Management Subsidiary and International Paper. And the northern site has been quite problematic and is going to take a considerable amount of time to get to the place where it is ready to start construction. And because of that, the EPA is currently looking at going ahead and starting that southern cleanup despite the delays, despite the things that are going on at that northern pit. So hopefully we will hear more about the progress here with the southern site and starting these two cleanups independent of one another at the next EPA community meeting. All right, now let's talk about the northern impoundment. Anything you see on my slides that is like this excerpt here, where the background is white, that is straight from the EPA's presentation, not my own words. So just bringing you guys information straight from the agency. So on February 3rd of this year, there was a request for a schedule extension for the northern impoundment. The EPA received that request from the responsible parties consultants. And the next day, there was a technical working group meeting. So on February 4th, there was a technical working group meeting, which was the day after the responsible parties consultants requested a 270-day extension. Keep in mind, in September of last year, these same folks requested a 160-day extension. We're going to go through the details of why this most recent extension was requested, and it's certainly very frustrating for those of us at the community level that are involved in this. That once again, uh, the EPA has authorized another extension for the northern impoundment, and they made that authorization on March 29th of 2021. All right, so again, these two excerpts here, straight from the EPA. Reason number one for the schedule extension. It states here, results of the wastewater treatability testing concluded that the approach to water treatment during excavation in a flooded environment is infeasible. Therefore, the proposed excavation methodology is not feasible. Respondents are now shifting to focus on performing all excavation work in the dry. Then later in the presentation, when the agency outlined technical challenges and uncertainties, they list here new approach, excavation in the dry. I have a huge problem with this, and I know some of you in the community who have been engaged in this effort for a very long time probably already know what that problem is, and it is this term, in the dry. This is nothing new. And now they're saying, oh, this concept that the responsible parties consultants were working on actually turned out to be infeasible. So we're going to go back to the original concept of in the dry, but they're calling it a new concept. It is not new. Let me show you. This page right here is from the record of decision that was signed in 2017, which outlines the basics of this cleanup. And it says here at the top of page 69, in the dry. The sentence, one of the best management practices proposed was the use of a cofferdam with excavation in the dry to prevent the resuspension and residuals that typically result from underwater dredging. This is straight from the EPA's own document. And now, over 3 years later, supposedly this is a new concept. I have a problem with this. It's not a new concept. We need the agency to buckle down on the responsible parties and hold them accountable to clean this mess up. I know every day that our community members drive by the site, see the site, think about the site, is another day that our community lives with the risks, lives with the fear of not if another storm or if another hurricane is going to disrupt this site, but when. All right, schedule extension reason number two. There are significant barriers and risks associated with excavating the deeper areas in dry conditions, and additional data will be required to evaluate the feasibility of this approach. So what they're talking about here is that when the record of decision was signed back in 2017, it was understood that the waste pit was about 12 to 14 feet deep there in the northern impoundment. During the design investigation, they found that in some areas it is actually over twice as deep. That's part of the reasoning behind why the direction shifted to leaving some water in there to help hold uh, the cofferdam, hold the pressure in the cofferdam on one end, while on the other side of the cofferdam is the river's water. And so this is, undoubtedly a complex situation. Um, but impossible it is not. There are many different ways that this could be approached, and unfortunately, we're not clear on all of the different ways that the agency is requiring the responsible parties contractors to look at cleaning up this site, whether it's from this principle right here of excavating in dry conditions, the type of cofferdam that's going to be constructed, to the treatment of water. It appears that they have been focusing on very singular concepts for the last 3+ years. And my understanding is that there have been additional discussions, but in terms of a full suite of, say, a feasibility study, or anything of that nature of what could be done, say, to treat the water, I'm unaware of anything, extensive in that regard that's gone on. Reason number 3. Currently, there are data gaps in the delineation of the vertical extent of the material that must be excavated, as well as a lack of geotechnical data in the areas where the new best management practices is to be located. Okay, so this is nothing new. We knew back in the fall of last year and the fall of 2020 that there were data gaps. We knew that. We knew that more sampling needed to be done. We knew that further delineation needed to be done. And here we are authorizing another extension. And, I just really strongly encourage the community to use your voice and raise your concerns and let the agency know that you are concerned about these continual delays. We all want a safe and effective cleanup, but we need to quit wasting time. Number 4. A coastal water authority project that includes changes to the Lake Houston control structures may affect water levels at the site. Those changed conditions could then require reassessment of the wall height and impact other aspects of the best management design. Once available, the Coastal Water Authority hydraulic modeling outputs will need to be incorporated by GHD into a model to evaluate the best management practices, and any best management practice design changes will need to be incorporated into the design. So the acronym that was in here, GHD, that is the consultant for the responsible parties that is doing the investigating, creating concepts, etc. here for this cleanup. And so the photo you're seeing here is the concept that they are looking at currently, which is a double barrier or double wall cofferdam, where, just like it sounds, as you see here, there are 2 parallel cofferdams, and in between is clean fill. And, that it is looking like that would be the best design. However, many of our residents are aware that there are changes going on at the Lake Houston Dam, and that there are going to be planned flood events moving forward to the south of the dam. And so they are doing modeling right now at the Coastal Water Authority. And so one of the reasons why GHD requested this extension was to wait on the modeling. That's great. That's all well and good. I think it is absolutely important for us to be looking at this holistically, looking at what else in the area is going on. So it's definitely important that these items are being considered and addressed. But, whenever we talk about modeling, it's definitely always best, that we remember that we as humans can only come up with as many scenarios or hypothetical situations as we can think of, right? And so we know that Mother Nature is a very, very powerful force, and it's important for us to take into consideration all of these items that can be modeled, that can be hypothesized, but at the end of the day, we're unable to foresee all of the items that could take place. So a holistic view, looking at all of the best management practices, all of the potential scenarios, is important. All right, and later in the presentation, they mentioned the schedule extension with regards to the waste characterization. And it says here, as part of approval of extension, EPA requested additional waste characterization samples be analyzed to supplement waste characterization sampling performed during previous PDI activities. I think we had a press conference in August or September of 2020 calling for this, asking for more waste characterization samples to be analyzed. I'm glad that it's going to be, according to what the EPA is telling us now, I'm glad it's going to be getting done, but, why is it taking, 7, 8 months to have movement on these items? It's really unreasonable when day in, day out, that site presents risks. And so we really need, the agency to keep pushing forward on this site. Okay, so y'all are going to hear from the EPA next month in June, and I look forward to you being able to think about what we've covered so far in this presentation and bring your questions and bring your concerns to the agency's attention, because they certainly need to be hearing from you. They need to be hearing from the community, from the people who day in and day out live near this area. Another great concern of many of you is the Texas Department of Transportation efforts in the area. So there are actually two different items going on in the area. One is the Dolphin Project. Many of us are familiar with the dolphin structures, those round structures in the river just to the north of I-10. One of them was severely damaged in Imelda when a barge struck it. And these dolphin structures were intended to be bumpers for Interstate 10 to hopefully prevent a barge from striking the interstate. And they were damaged in Imelda, and they have not been repaired since. And so this summer, actually in May and June, the dolphin structures are going to be getting repaired, and I believe they're adding an additional dolphin structure. So you will see construction going on in the river this summer in very close proximity to the waste pits, but the actual construction itself is for these dolphin structures. The other item a lot of folks are concerned about is the bridge replacement for Interstate 10. So, last we were all informed was that this effort was probably going to actually break ground. The construction was actually going to start in 2025. So it looks like right now the design contractor will be selected this year, and then they will move forward in the design process and starting construction, if all goes on schedule, in 2025. All right, another item here. The San Jacinto River Fleet property is one of the closest shipyards to the waste pits. And this property was purchased by Ingram Barge, and it now operates as the Houston Fleeting Service. So from time to time, we reference this property, we discuss activity in the area, and so if moving forward you see Houston Fleeting Services, or HFS, wanted you to be aware that is the former San Jacinto River Fleet property. Now, they had informed the EPA about some activities that were going to be taking place at the facility. However, these were not activities that were going to impact the waste pits. They were in the area, but not immediately adjacent to the waste pits. The EPA did not feel that they were going to have any impact at all to dredging or to the waste pits themselves. And so the EPA just wanted to make us aware of these changes in the name, and that there was some activity, but that it was not, in the EPA's opinion, of concern for the waste pits. All right, so in the last I'd say 6 months, I have sent a lot of questions to the EPA. And so I wanted to take the opportunity and just put their slide right here on the screen for you. You can go ahead and pause this recording if you want to write any of this information down. A lot of these questions here come straight from the community, right? These questions are straight from my correspondence with community members and individuals from the area who have concerns that they feel are not getting answered. And so the EPA outlined the questions that I'd asked and put the responses right here. So first and foremost, community members are consistently concerned about who they can contact other than me in an emergency at the waste pits, such as the barge strike during Imelda. And so right here is the National Response Center hotline. It is a 1-800 number, which that will connect you to the EPA's National Response Center, and then they will filter it from there to the appropriate place. You can also contact the EPA's Remedial Project Manager, who I recognize many of you have never met. She became the Remedial Project Manager when Gary Baumgarten left the EPA in the end of 2020. And so her email is listed here on the screen. All right, the next one. Following Imelda's barge incidents, has the EPA and other agencies formulated any kind of agreement, understanding, or plan and efforts of preparedness to avoid a repeat of those barge incidents? So, there is the Lone Star Harbor Safety Committee that the EPA became aware of and began engaging with after Imelda. It's my understanding that the EPA has not had engagement with this entity since Ashley came on board in the end of 2020 as the remedial project manager. Also, the other entity, that is directly involved here with jurisdiction and oversight is the Coast Guard. But although the EPA, recognizes this question, outlines a couple of entities here, it does not appear that there is any kind of ongoing dialogue, planning, or anything of that sort. So if this were a yes or no answer, I would say that the answer is no. All right, the next question. Is EPA coordinating with other agencies regarding navigation on the river during remediation of the waste pits? This will likely become particularly complex when the TxDOT bridge replacement is taking place at the same time. So the agency listed out TxDOT and Coast Guard. And the EPA is in communication with these entities. It does not appear from their response that there is a navigation plan. And the agency at the CAC meeting said, well, TxDOT doesn't even have all of the funding for the bridge replacement. So it's moving along. It's looking like construction will start in 2025, but that is if the project gets funded. So there's a little bit of a caveat there with the bridge replacement. And then as far as the timeline for the waste pits, it looks like, we may not see construction actually begin for that northern pit for at least 2 more years. And so that puts us into 2023, 2024, probably for a construction start timeframe, which, if TxDOT's project goes according to plan, the construction will be taking place at the same time. All right, so for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers communication, there have been permit after permit application in the area of concern around the waste pits that is the area outlined by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as an area that needs any type of dredging permit request needs to go through a special process before it could be approved due to the potential for contaminated material to be in the sediment. And so we have seen, companies do a body of work, undergo dredging efforts, and then ask for a permit after the fact, and it get authorized. We've seen, permit requests in the area that, we did not see or were not aware of any of these additional protocols that the entity went through, and they were still approved. So there's been a really big breakdown of communication and of sticking to the process outlined by the Army Corps here. And so this again has some really helpful information on it that I wanted to again give you guys the opportunity to go ahead and pause the screen so that you can keep this information, take a screenshot. Nonetheless, this is really, really important for our understanding, as a community of the different actors and the different processes when it comes to permitting and activities in the area. So it says here first, permits proposed in the area of concern as defined in the 2009 public announcement are forwarded to EPA Superfund for review. We have notified the EPA of permit applications in the area of concern on multiple occasions where the EPA was not aware. The EPA had not been informed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we have a serious breakdown in communication. So this first point, that if there are permits proposed in this area, that they are forwarded to the EPA Superfund division for review, that's in theory, that's in concept, right? That's not exactly what we've been seeing in reality. And so this is definitely part of a larger discussion that has to be had about interagency communication and coordination in this delicate situation. Okay, point number 2, EPA evaluates all proposed activities in this area individually to ensure that it does not impact site investigation and cleanup. The third point, if dredge spoil is sampled, TCEQ takes the lead on evaluating the samples and determining the appropriate disposal location. So sampling of the dredge material is something that was outlined in that 2009 public announcement for permit requests in the area of concern. There's any dredging operation in this area is supposed to go through a specific sampling process. So it says here, if the dredge spoil is sampled, TCEQ takes the lead on evaluating the samples and determining the appropriate disposal location, not the Army Corps. So, again, we've got a lot of different agencies kind of crossing over into these same processes, but it's, on one hand, you have the Army Corps that authorizes the dredging permit, but it's TCEQ that takes the lead on evaluating the samples and determining the appropriate disposal location. So this is really important information and items for us to understand because, like I said, we see these permits all the time. And these are a lot of the questions folks are asking. Who does what? The fourth point here, if activity is occurring within the area of concern and there is no permit application, EPA forwards the information to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This is a scenario we have observed, and this is a scenario where you, the local community members, are absolutely critical. Your local knowledge, your on-the-ground experience and observations is essential to protecting your community. The folks at the Army Corps who authorize or deny permits, they probably don't live in the community, right? They have an office in Galveston. They have their regional office just outside of Dallas. And so then you have the EPA. Well, they're, for our region, it's headquartered in Dallas. How about TCEQ? Nope. Once again, they're not headquartered here. And so oftentimes when the EPA is informed of activities taking place that do not have a permit, it's because of you guys. It's because the community members, our folks on the ground, have alerted us that activity is going on And then we roll out from there, letting the other agencies know and inquiring from there. And so it's so important, for the integrity of this area, that you guys continue letting us know what you're seeing and what you're observing there on the ground, so that we can let the people who make the decisions know what exactly is going on. And then it says here, the last point, if an activity were to directly impact the remedy for the site or the remedial design, remedial action that is ongoing at the site, EPA would take action. For example, there was a permit recently, and I'm sorry, it was not a permit. It was a letter of permission, the Holtmar letter of permission that we've covered in previous presentations. And they were, requesting to do this dredging effort. We're still waiting on the response from the Army Corps of Engineers on whether they approved or denied this. And the letter of permission, would not require them to go through this full process for the sampling and whatnot. And the EPA's position on this is that it doesn't impact the site. So I understand that it doesn't impact the waste pits, but it is within the area of concern. And the process outlined in the 2009 public announcement for dredging efforts in this area of concern should still be upheld. And so it's kind of one of those instances where, the agency is looking specifically and very directly at the pits of this Superfund site themselves, rather than the larger area of concern as defined by the Army Corps. So there's a bit of a difference there with, what the EPA very specifically is looking at, and then what the Army Corps of Engineers set out to look at with this 2009 public announcement. All right, folks. So I have covered the updates from the CAC meeting. I wanted to brief you all on those because you are very likely going to be hearing those updates and more at the upcoming EPA public meeting. And I want you all to be thinking about this stuff, digesting it, coming up with your questions and concerns, and bringing them to the meeting. Before we talk more about that, let's talk about public health. Right now, you're looking at a map of the study area for the cancer investigation. The last time that Texas Department of State Health Services investigated cancer rates around the San Jacinto River waste pits. The waste pits are indicated here on this map by the black dot. Any of these zones or census tracts that you see here that are red versus the brighter blue, any of them that are in red had a higher than normal rate of at least one type of cancer. Many of them had more than one type of cancer that was abnormally high. However, the state only looked at the 17 types of cancer that we most commonly see in the community. But that doesn't mean that's everything that's out there, right? That's only 17 types of cancer. And of those 17 types, 14 of them came back in statistically significant rates. So, what they found was pretty startling. And so right now we have a health survey initiative to get as much information as we can about what the community is struggling with today, what the community has been struggling with in recent years, so that we can ask Department of State Health Services to look at these specific types of cancer. So if you have not filled out one of our health surveys, please do. If you know of a friend, family member, colleague, whomever in the community who themselves or their family, is battling cancer, we would really like to hear from you. We can only best advocate for the community if we're hearing from y'all. If we're not hearing from you, if we don't know what types of cancer to be looked at, we won't be able to ask for those specific types, and therefore they're not going to get looked at by the state. All right, save the date, June 10th. June 10th is the EPA's public meeting. They're going to host the meeting virtually. They're going to host the meeting on Microsoft Teams. I know that many of our community members don't care for this virtual space. Many are not comfortable in person, but many are. So, what we're going to do is we're going to host two viewing locations. So, there's going to ultimately be four ways that you can attend the EPA's public meeting. The EPA will be hosting their meeting online. You can tune in on Microsoft Teams virtually, or you can phone in to the meeting that will be streaming on Microsoft Teams. Or if you want to come in person, if you are unable to, or if you are uncomfortable with, the virtual platform, we will be streaming the meeting live at the Channelview Fire Department and at the San Jacinto Community Center or the Highlands Community Center. And we welcome you to join the meeting in one of these four ways. But if you would like to join one of the viewing locations, I strongly encourage you to. You will have an opportunity to engage, with the EPA through our viewing locations. We'll have a process in place to capture your questions or concerns and to get them to the agency in real time. And so we will have, one of our team members at THEA interacting on the laptop in the virtual space with the agency. And while the meeting will be streamed up on a big screen in the fire station and at the community center, so in real time, you should be able to receive a response or feedback from the agency. Now, there is limited capacity at both of these facilities. I believe the community center's capacity is at 100. And so we'll be setting up the tables, spaced out in a distance. It is a Harris County facility, so there is a mask order, at the facility. But we want to make sure that we are meeting the community's needs where they are today. And so whether that's can join from your own home virtually. You can call in to the line, or you can join us in person at one of the two locations. And we hope that you will attend. At the end of the day, the agency needs to hear from you. They need to see you. They need to know that you are concerned and that you care. And so we will be sending out follow-up emails with the details of the variety of ways that you can join or engage in this meeting. And this is going to be the first time that the EPA has hosted a public meeting for the San Jacinto River waste pits since 2019. I strongly encourage you to get involved. Thank you all for joining us in this presentation, and I look forward to seeing you all at the June 10th EPA meeting.